Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Sahar, and I'm having Dr. Ghalib Abbasi as our guest today, who is currently working as a System Director of Pharmacy Informatics at Methodist Hospital. Before starting this session, please note that this session will be recorded for to be shared on the social media, and we will have Q&A session at the end. But you are most welcome to raise your hands or post questions in the chat anytime you like. Until then, please keep your audios and videos turned off. Now coming back to Dr. Abbasi, how are you doing today, sir?
Hello, Sahar. I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking.
Sir, I have been asked this question multiple times by multiple pharmacists. So I would like to start my first question of the day with the same question, that what exactly is the role of an informatics pharmacist in the healthcare system of United States, or you can say anywhere in this world, wherever the system is implemented?
Sure. Yeah, so the informatics pharmacist, actually, the main job is to support what we call the medication life cycle. The medication life cycle is basically a four-stage process. What we're talking about is medication prescribing, medication preparation, distribution, and administration. So, for example, the preparation, the prescribing would be, the computerized order entry system. It would be basically any system we use to prescribe, whether e-prescribe or not. And then you would have the second stage, which is the preparation. Those can be the IV compounding robots or solutions, or can be the semi or fully automated compounding or intravenous systems. And then you'd have the distribution, which is any system that you use, whether inside the pharmacy, such as like the carousels or robots to dispense doses, or on the nursing units, such as like the automated dispensing cabinets, mostly known as Pyxis or Omnicell. And then you'd have the administration, which is the, whatever related to, for example, the infusion pumps, as an example. So the informatics pharmacist's job is to support all of these from the build and from the maintenance standpoint.
I see. So I understand it's very different from the traditional retail or a community pharmacist role. But how would you compare both of them as far as from the career perspective? How would you compare both?
They're very different, Sahar. I think what's happening here is you're comparing your role that's kind of like more public facing, more at the end of the cycle of a medication-patient relationship, to a role that is mainly directed to the healthcare providers. The informatics pharmacists mainly deal with healthcare providers for the first degree, mainly I would say pharmacists, physicians, nurses. Those are your quote-unquote customers, versus in the retail industry, where your main customers are the outpatients, literally, like you deal firsthand with the patients. That would be the difference over here. And that's because of the nature of the work. Also, the informatics pharmacists are mostly focused on projects. So they deal every day, with tickets and with projects, and they run a lot of meetings with their stakeholders. I think that would be the main difference here.
I see. So what according to you is the requirement in terms of experience or certification to land an informatics pharmacist job? I know it's not very easy to get one. So since you have been in this field for a really long time, what according to you would be the best experience or best certification for this particular field?
Sure, and usually this is a tricky question, really, because if we look like 15 years or 20 years ago, there wasn't a formal training for informatics. Basically, anyone who wanted to enter into informatics, they go by the experience. So you would spend typically about 3 to 4 years in the inpatient pharmacy setting as a pharmacist before you actually start looking into moving into a specialized area such as informatics. And that's still, for the most part, part of the job description. Whenever anyone applies for the pharmacy informatics role as an entry position, you would see that requirement of having at least 3 or 4 years of inpatient pharmacy experience or equivalent. However, things changed and life moved on since then. And for the most part, we still have the majority of the informatics pharmacists today go into this field by experience, meaning that you get engaged into projects, you get engaged into certain activities, mostly within the inpatient setting, and then that will lead you to land an informatics job. The other routes that are available today are the residency routes, so people can apply for residency. And the residency usually is a 2-year program. You would get your PGY1, and then you would go into your PGY2. And those are the, the residency is a much better opportunity to land informatics position these days. And I can tell you because we just opened a residency program where I work at Houston Methodist for the informatics. And that program is the 5th program of its kind in the world. What this entails people to do is whenever you graduate from the program, you are 1 out of 5 people who actually just graduated with a 2-year structured program like that. And typically in this case, the job will find you, not you find the job actually. I mean, I keep getting phone calls from institutions around the country asking me for candidates because they think that we have candidates right now, although we just started the program. But the job market is very hot for the informatics once you are actually formally trained. And the other opportunity here, of course, is to do like a master's program in informatics. That's the other thing as well, because that will also enhance your opportunities further, although it's not very specific for pharmacy. I really encourage people who want to go into this route to consider the formal training route, because sometimes it's not easy to get into the inpatient side and start, getting engaged into projects. I mean, even today, like for pharmacists who are in the inpatient side, who wanted to get engaged into projects, there aren't always opportunities to get engaged. So the formal training would be the best way to go, in my opinion here. And also keep in mind there's the certification route, which is you get certified with the electronic medical record specifics, certifications such as like EPIC or Cerner or Meditech. Here, for example, in the Houston Medical Center, the one that people like to use a lot is EPIC. EPIC is the EMR that everyone here like to use. There were a couple of institutions who like Cerner, and very few ones who like Meditech. But I would say maybe like 90% of the folks here they use EPIC. So those would be like the routes of how to enter into this field.
So since you have just mentioned the EPIC certification, I know it's not very easy to get the EPIC certification or get yourself EPIC certified. I remember reading it somewhere that there are various ways of getting EPIC certified. One of the ways is that you have to be already working in a hospital or a facility that is using EPIC. Or I believe the other way was to go in another state and stay there for a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months, and then you can get EPIC certified. So according to you, what would be the easiest way of getting EPIC certified? As I know that this is usually required if you are working as an informatics pharmacist.
Absolutely, and EPIC actually is making it difficult for people to get certified outside their employer, and there's a good reason why they're doing this. EPIC looks at the certification when someone tries to certify without an employer as a competition, because EPIC themselves do have a consulting service themselves. So, for example, if I need help from EPIC into building a very specific workflow that I do not have the expertise for, they would offer me their consulting service, and they charge me for this. And that's why for EPIC, training people outside their employers are quote unquote like threat to their business. And that's why the EPIC certification almost always happens when you are an employer, when you are actually when you work for an employer. And then the employer would sponsor you. Now, it doesn't matter at that point who pays for what. I mean, you can pay for it, but you will need to go under the umbrella of an employer. And the employer doesn't mean it has to be a hospital, by the way, not necessarily, because there are many other employers who are not hospitals who are also Epic customers. And I'll give you an example. Even Walgreens, by the way, Walgreens, CVS, um, at the corporate level, they do have Epic instances. So if anyone's working in retail who wanted to seek certification like this, I really encourage you to ask the question to your employer and see if you can go under their umbrella. Now, who pays for that is a different story. You can negotiate that with you with CVS or Walgreens, but I know they offer this level of coverage because they use something called Care Everywhere, and Care Everywhere is a function within Epic that providers across the country and the world uh, subscribe to it. And what this means is you can get certified as a Walgreens pharmacist or as a CVS pharmacist under Epic and take that certification. The question is whether Walgreens or CVS would sponsor you for something like this, or even would let you, because obviously you're going to be seeking inpatient certification, and they may question that. But again, this can be a discussion between someone and the and their employer and CVS and Walgreens. But there are ways around this, I guess. That's my point.
That's, I think, I understand what you are trying to say over here. But I understand there are certain programs like you said that master's degree or EPIC certification. There are 2-3 different routes. Or if you are having any inpatient experience like for 3-4 years, that's understandable. But I was trying to ask another thing. Uh, there are certain small certifications like ASHP. They are offering some. I was recently I recently came across that certification. It's like informatics. It's called informatics certification, or I believe a study course. So is there any impact of those small certifications compared? I mean, it's definitely not compared to EPIC or master's program at all. But is there any impact of such kind of small certifications on your resume when you are looking at a candidate who is trying to apply for this job?
I think they help. Quite frankly, I think they help.
Helps.
The certificate with the ASHP, and I think there's a charge for it. Like there's, I think, some payment that needs to be made.
Yes,
over there.
I believe 400 something.
Yeah. And I think that they help. Quite frankly, when someone applies to us as an informatics pharmacist, um, uh, it's good to have all the credentials. Being an inpatient pharmacist, being a even like a residency graduate. All this stuff is good. But really, what I care about the most, and I think like many of the directors across the country would share this opinion with me, is the actual skill set that someone is presenting. So it doesn't really matter to me, like what credentials you come up with, what certificates you provide. If someone doesn't know what they're doing, we're not gonna hire them. That's for sure. And typically, this comes out with interviews and the questions that we have with individual upon applying for the program. So we for sure look at the background, because the background tells us a lot, about where someone is coming from, what their experience is. But really, what matters also the most for us is the skill set and the knowledge about the informatics section. So if 2 people apply to us, one of them do have, let's say, the informatics certificate from ASHP, and someone else with the residency program, and the person with the informatics certificate does much better the interview than the person on the with the residency program, I would definitely go with the certificate person, because I care about the skill set, and the skills are very crucial and important here. Even though this scenario is very difficult to believe, to have someone who did like 2 years of residency who will not do better on an interview. But at the end of the day, this is what we look at. We look at the individual and what they know.
I see. So from my understanding is that informatics is not a field really for someone who is straight out of school, like a fresh graduate. Is that correct? Or is there still any hope for entry-level pharmacists to explore this option?
In informatics, there are several levels, I would say, of, so there's like the entry level, and there's the intermediate and the experience level. And alter this, like it really depends on the employer. It really depends on who you're applying to. Most employers do not want to spend too much time training individuals in this field because, think about it this way. If I'm going to get someone from scratch, then we need to acquaint them with this field within our house, which will consume time, will consume resources, all these kind of things. However, there are certain positions that do not require too much training, kind of like pre-entry positions, I would say. And good examples of this would be the analyst positions that may or may not require even like a pharmacist degree. There are still pharmacy informatics positions, but they're not necessarily pharmacists. Those ones can accept um, uh, kind of like a new graduate, because the expectation is that we're going to have you spend some time with us and learn the trade secrets before we engage you with more serious items. That can be it, but the issue is that those positions are very limited. There aren't so many of these, and usually they're not very appealing for pharmacists, because usually like they start with a salary range that's less than what the pharmacist would make. It's not very appealing really for pharmacists. But I think what I advise people to do in the past is, if you are intending to work in the informatics field at some point in your career, I think it's worthwhile to, number one, look into the credentials that you have. So for example, if you are a bachelor's degree, look into acquiring like a PharmD. Even though people sometimes may advise otherwise, but I highly encourage people to look into the PharmD option, because this will open much more doors for you than the bachelor's degree. It will actually let you sit down for an interview for residency, as a matter of fact, if you decide to go that route. Be careful when you go that route, though, because sometimes employers would look at someone with a long experience as a pharmacist who want to sit down for residency as kind of like questionable, because you're stepping down, so to speak, from where you're in. The resident doesn't make that much, by the way, when you compare to the full-time pharmacist. I mean, we're talking about a residency program, and there's a stipend of, I think, like about like 50,000 a year. That's like standard across like all the residency programs. So to have a pharmacist apply to get like their salary cut in half or more, that's not something that most people would entertain. And you need to have a strong reason to do this, and a good desire to move that route. But I think I've seen the exception. I've seen this before. I've seen people who are foreign graduates who are actually moving into this route with no problems. It just depends on how you train yourself, how you present yourself, and how you proceed. Basically, there's nothing impossible here in this field. But you need to just do the game right, get the proper training, see if you can get the PharmD, see if you can work as an inpatient pharmacist. Quite frankly, that will benefit a lot if you can get into that arena. And then all the informatics for the inpatient side will open for you. I want to also make sure I mention here that informatics does not mean always inpatient. That can be also a misconception. Informatics is both inpatient and outpatient. Although the focus is mainly inpatient because of the complexity of the clinical decision support and all the projects that are going on, but informatics was never limited to inpatient. It's actually both inpatient and outpatient.
Both of them. That's awesome. And I actually just let me stop this video first. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a relief to even hear the fact that it's same for foreign graduates as well. I was about to ask that same question, but you have already answered, and I'm because I know that there are so many foreign pharmacy graduates that are in Texas already, and they have same question all the time, that what is the opportunity for them in the healthcare system over here if they are a foreign graduate. But that's definitely a relief to know that. To conclude this session, the conversational session, what is your one advice that you would like to give other pharmacists that are seeking job in this area?
my advice is to look at this as the future of pharmacy. Look at this as a niche area to target. The pharmacy field now is very congested with lots of graduates, lots of people who want to specialize in many areas. And this field is very intriguing. It's very appealing. And there's a good reason why, because there's a big market for it. So my advice here is seek formal training, please. Whether it's through taking your degree to the next step of making it a PharmD if you don't have one, or take it as a master's degree. Look at opportunities with companies that can give you some certification. And then look at the master's programs as well. Get engaged into projects as much as you can, even at your work. You don't have to even do, I would say, something like huge to become an informatics pharmacist. I didn't share with you even my personal story of how I became an informatics pharmacist, because I wasn't. I was hired a long time ago at Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, Michigan, and the assignment that was handed to me at the time, and this is how things start, by the way. You just starts with an assignment that you do very good at, and you grab the attention of everyone else. The assignment for me at the time was to build a database for the kerosene, which is the internal pharmacy dispensing system. So I used to spend nights, and I don't know if you know what I mean by Michigan in February. But when you go in a hospital under construction and wearing your vests and helmet and going there in the dark and cold weather to get to the department that's still under construction, and then you sit down on a cold chair and you just have the kerosene in front of you, and you're the only one there, building line by line all these entries over there. And I remember maybe a year after that, when our informatics coordinator resigned, the director at the time approached me and asked me to sit down in his position, because my hands were wet enough for the project that he trusted me to continue holding the torch in this case. So that's, I think, maybe one way to do it. I would say, please get engaged with projects, seek formal training as much as you can, even wherever you are. If you work today in a hospital, seek projects within the hospital. Today, for example, whenever there's an initiative somewhere within my institution, the first thing I do is that I ask for a task force, and the task force gets constituted of inpatient pharmacists to guide the process. Not that because I can't guide it myself, because we can, but we like to engage people, and we like to give the opportunity for people to jump on and show us the best out of them. And that usually serves as a purpose to move forward in their career. If you work in a retail industry, check with your employer, see if there's any project that you can actually get engaged with that's actually informatics based. If you are working, as a matter of fact, in a retail industry or long-term care, there's a huge opportunity for automation. So you may do your own study on that one and maybe work with your company to champion something like this. And it just takes you to be more, offering more perseverance and persistence, asking the question, and you'll get where you want. As long as you keep seeking what you're looking after, you should be able to find eventually what you need. And also keep networking, with others. So like what we're doing here today, because then you will get to know the most recent trends. You get to know any open opportunities. And in our case, for example, we opened it at some point for volunteers to come over and volunteer in our department. And we took one before COVID actually started. So these are the kind of things that we do. If you can get your foot into the door in any of these ways, it's just going to take you just a little bit more effort to get where you want to be.
Definitely, absolutely. And definitely it's a very good option to go for such projects, because that's the way you can also end up having one of those career opportunities if you're going through that route. Thank you, Dr. Abbasi, for a very informative session. And we will now proceed to questions read by the audience. And I do see a couple of questions in the chat box as well. But otherwise, I will be taking questions one by one by prompting your names. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or post the questions in the chat box. And once I would request you to turn on your video or audio. Please turn on your video, and please be advised to turn off your video and audio once your questions is answered, so that the next person can take your place. So I will take this first question, which is in the chat box for quite some time, is that what is the biggest challenge of being an informatics pharmacist? It is from Rania.
Okay, thank you, Rania. I hope you're doing okay. Rania, actually, the biggest challenge here is that for a pharmacist is to keep up with the tasks, prioritizing them, and maintain the timelines that you promise your end users. You're under basically a project timeline. So that actually is a good question about like what do actually pharmacists do in the informatics as well, like every day when they come in, because you have like a certain like number of tickets or projects that you're working on, but there are things that evolve over time. I mean, there are like emergencies that happen. So the biggest challenge is to prioritize correctly what you need to do. And that will take communication with your customers, who are like basically the healthcare providers, whether they're pharmacists or physicians or nurses, and escalate as needed. So basically patient care is not delayed or harmed. That would be the challenge over here, is to how to prioritize and seek advice. And typically when you have a structured program and structured like processes, that's part of what the organization is going to tell you upfront. So you don't need to do too much maneuver on your end. And you would have a strong team to support you in this case. But that would be the challenge here.
Thanks for answering the question, Dr. Ghalib. I will be taking next question from Ehtisham, and I am sending you a request to start your video.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me, guys? I'm sorry,
yes,
I'm just wearing the mask
you.
because I was outside. I just came in. I was just listening to this whole conversation while driving. Thank you so much for arranging this session. I really congratulate you, Sahar.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Dr. Abbasi, for the information you provided to us. And it's really helpful because we have somebody to guide us through these, times we are facing as a foreign pharmacist. So my question would be is that, so if a pharmacist, well, I'm in talk with a couple of big institutions like Memorial Hermann and also ASHP, because there's a certain requirement to get into the residency program, right? Being a foreign grad, we have to have a pharmacist license, then we can definitely go for the applications. The thing is that let's see if we if we get hired in as an informative pharmacist, and then we work there. And so is there any scope besides this that we can work as an independent pharmacist to set up the set up all the softwares where these are required, because the hospitals always need it and it's really expensive for them, because I work in the administration also. It's really expensive for them to be to hire somebody who is really professional. And so my question is, if I'm working as an informative pharmacist, do I have a scope beyond the hospital to go and work as an independent pharmacist? I would say as a consultant. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, that's a good question. And as a matter of fact, that's what most informaticists end up doing, working as consultants, as a matter of fact, sometime in their career. The trick though here is that you probably cannot do work as a consultant at that level on your own, like unless you want to be like an individual contractor. Typically what you do in this case, you would actually work for larger consulting companies. There's a company called Leidos. There's another company that's called I'm trying to recall the company's name because we deal with them a lot. I think it's slipped my mind at this point, but there are like many actually consulting agencies that their job actually is to communicate with healthcare systems and provide them the manpower. And for the healthcare system, like I'll give you like an example with our side here. We prefer to do that every once in a while because it's quicker. It's a little bit like more cost effective from our side. even though we pay on average 3 times the salary when we pay for a consultant. That's how much it costs me when I get a consultant. But at the same time, you just need them for like a month or 2 months, so that's fine. That's no problem. But we don't go to individual contractors. We go to a company such as like Lido, such as I think CSA. I think that's the name of the company, CSA. And we basically just have them just send us the the names, and we interview them. But I think that would be the ultimate goal over here for someone who is independent, is to be able to work under that umbrella. And I'll be honest with you, the money that you get from consulting is probably double the money that you would get when you work as a full-timer. I'll be honest with you about this, because the salary that one of the companies pay, and I'll tell you like how much we pay here for consultants. So on average, the consultants, when we pay them, they get like about, maybe like for pharmacists, maybe $180 an hour. That's how much they get.
Nice.
But then that goes to the company, it doesn't go to the consultant.
Yeah.
And then the company will take the commission. And the
Right.
commission is usually about 30 or 35%. And they'll pass on from the 180 about like 110 per hour to you. But that 110 is good. I mean, 110 per hour, I mean, if you think about it, that's almost double what, the average
Right.
pharmacy salary today. So you still make a whole chunk of money with this. The disadvantage though is that it's very unstable.
Right.
Because if there's project, you work. If there's no project, you don't work. And that's a challenge over here. But absolutely, I mean, it's definitely like a route that many people consider.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ehtisham, for asking this question. I will be stopping your video from here so that I can ask the next question. And it will be from Jahazeb. I'm requesting you to unblock your video. And after that, I will be taking some questions from the chat section that I can already see over there. People are posting. This is Jahazeb.
Hello, and first of all, I'm really thankful to Dr. Abbasi for your time and Sahar for arranging this whole meeting. I have like basically two basic questions. One is like according to the
Did we lose Jahazeb? I don't hear him.
Somehow, Jahazeb, your video, it got blocked, or I think the network is down. So what I can do is I can take this question again. Oh no, he's back. He's back. Jahazeb, we were not able to hear anything from your side. Your network was probably down. Can you say that again, please?
Right,
Your two questions.
So let me start all over again. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abbasi for giving us this much time, and thank you, Sahar, for arranging this thing. I have basically like two basic questions. First question is like, according to the situation right now, how does this COVID situation affect the jobs, this informatics jobs and this informatic job market? And this is my first question. Yeah, you can elaborate on that. And my second question is like, are there any like small projects, or like just like Shami just asked about the consultant thing, but I'm talking about like any small project, like any a fresh graduate pharmacist or a pharmacist who just recently got the license, get those small projects from the hospital, like just like doing the freelancing thing, or just like what do you call, just volunteering for those kind of projects regarding to informatics. That is my
Sure. Absolutely. For the first question about the COVID impact, I encourage you, Jancy, to check my most recent article about this and LinkedIn, and how COVID actually is impacting how this will look like. But in brief, I think what I can tell you is the impact of COVID is that it boosted the telemedicine and telepharmacy big time in this case. So we see a lot of like counseling that's happening now remotely between pharmacists and patients. So the market now is shifting more towards the remote services, toward contactless deliveries of medications. At some point, we will see like more drone deliveries happening across the country. We will see mail order being expanded further and further and better covered by employers and by pharmacies. So all these will require actually technologies to support them. And all these technologies will require pharmacists to create them and to maintain them at the same time. So that's I think where this market is going. I expect like anyone who want now to invest the time to do like any of these like telepharmacy services, whether you're dispensing remotely or you're counseling remotely. Now is the time to do this, and those projects will be very vital over the next year or even beyond. Honestly, COVID changed our life forever. By the way, I mean I think things have changed significantly over here. And the other question was the small projects. So as a new graduate, and like we indicated earlier, I don't think it's easier to get into hospitals as compared to basically working with your current employer on these kind of smaller projects. And there might be opportunity with working with a consulting agency like Leidos or CSA or any of these as an entry level. And they will actually give you smaller projects to work on. They may negotiate the hourly rate with you at that point, but that's fine. At least you put something under your belt. Most of the projects are timed at like 6 months maximum. That's the most case. So if you get into one of these consulting agencies and try to work out these details with them, there might be some smaller projects, but not directly with the institutions though. And also you can do it on your own, of course. You can create your own product, you can patent it, and you can sell it, but that will take more effort on your end, of course. So yeah, I mean there are opportunities, but I think the best route here for an entry level person is what we described earlier in this session here.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for asking this question, and Dr. Ghalib, thanks a lot for answering. We have a couple of questions coming in through chat. So this question would be from Ruxana. And the question is, if you were about to hire a pharmacist with qualities and character, not informatic knowledge, do you look for an employee?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question, Roxana. I hope you're doing great. And the idea is the point of the interview in general is to check on only one thing. Because I can read resumes all day long, and I can look at all, everything that someone present on their resumes, all the experience, all the stuff. We don't need to meet someone to read them. The one thing that we get out of the interview, which is the most important thing, is the attitude towards work. Your attitude toward work is what makes a day and night difference in our decision over when we hire someone. What this means is that we want to make sure that you are you show us like the attitude that you are proactive to work on certain problem lists. You are proactive when you troubleshoot. You are willing to work as a team member, and you aren't going to basically retrieve back if we ask you for help at the time of need. We want people who are ready to roll up their sleeves when we need them. Not that we're like we're crazy like environment or institution, but that level of attitude is needed every day. We live in Texas, and Texas and Houston is in a disaster zone for the hurricanes. So we need to understand the willingness in this case for people to basically be able to help during time of disaster, your availability, all these kind of things. So the attitude is very important here with what we look at. Your teamwork, your interaction with us when you interview. We look at all these kind of things, and those actually are to a certain degree as equal or even more important than your entire background when we look at your resume. So I hope this answers the question.
I believe so. So the next question is from Mona, and the question is how you see pharmacy profession in the future. What is the fastest growing area now, informatics, or there are still other areas need attention?
Yeah, and thanks, Mona, for asking. I mean, basically, the informatics is the niche area here for sure. I think the other areas that I see growth, and at least from a day-to-day basis here, is pharmacogenomics. Pharmacogenomics seem to be on the rise over here, and also telepharmacy or remote verification, and that was boosted recently because of COVID. But these two areas, along with informatics, are like the hot topics. I don't think there's much to add on the other standard specialties like the oncology or or critical care, that has been there for a long time. But the areas where you are seeing now the boost in them are these three areas. And I may be biased because of my background with informatics, but I think informatics will keep growing for a very long time because technology is always embedding itself in every single piece of item we're doing, including pharmacogenomics and including telepharmacy. You need someone strong with informatics to support all these initiatives.
Definitely. I personally think as well that pharmacogenetics or genomics and also nutrigenomics, these are also the other areas that are really blooming right now and like on top of the list. And I also see a future growth in that area specifically. So thanks a lot for answering the question. The next question is from Tanvir. And the question is, what is your advice for pharmacists who are close to retirement or are retired, but wants to continue to be productive professionally, have years of experience in inpatient and management, but no certification?
Yeah. Thank you, Tanvir, for this question. I mean, basically, for our friends and families, of course, and anyone who spent so many years within inpatient or management, certification becomes basically a secondary item on the resume. Basically, your resume will rely heavily on your experience. Certification becomes really secondary here. And what I see most people do is that they go into consulting. That's the vast majority of the folks that I see. And quite frankly, if you go into LinkedIn and look at people who comment, and people who basically like start their consulting agencies or work for consulting agencies, most of them are, they start this approach, I would say like maybe mid-age towards the retirement, something like this. You start thinking like this. And let me give you like an advice here. Whether you are actually retired or approaching retirement, or you are in mid-age, it's not too late to start any of these. I mean, you can start really like anytime. I think if you have that long of an experience, you can easily approach a lot of the consulting agencies, which are different, by the way, in this case, from the ones we mentioned, like Leidos or CSA or whatever. This time you would go into the actual coaching agencies who would actually spend time with clients nationwide to advise them into best and most efficient operations to handle. And if you have background in finance, that's even better because you can now advise on how to handle like even the financial aspect in this case. My advice also for anyone who is in their 40s or 50s is this is the best time in your life to start planning your next career, your final career. I would say I don't like the word final career, but it's just the next phase or the next stage in your life after you retire. You need to start planting the seeds from now. So whenever like you see yourself experience with any aspect, seek to be involved into this field on a national level, whether by attending those meetings, whether it's ASHP or APHA, or even like formal meetings nationwide. And then basically what you do, you get engaged with these groups, maybe like on a part-time basis, maybe like once a week or once a month or so on, while you are now working the full-time job that you're working today. But this will help you plant the seeds for the future. So 10, 15 years from now, when you're about to come close to retire, at least you have something to continue with after retirement because you already established your name, you established your career, and then you can actually start working towards that, satisfaction during retirement. Because keep in mind, people when they retire, they also still enjoy working. They actually love working when they retire. And you probably don't want to work like 40 hours a week when you retire. But I'll tell you this, like most people when they retire, they still prefer to have some sort of connection with the profession, even if it's like one day a week. So if you establish that kind of connection early on, plant the seeds, then at that time you'll be in a much better shape. If you are already there, I think there are lots of areas that you can actually invest your time in today, including those consulting agencies and coaching organizations that will love to have you over there and use your experience. Sahar, I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Mute. Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Abbasi, for answering this question in detail. We have another question from Asiri, if I'm pronouncing name correct. How useful is the Masters of Certification in Health Informatics and PBMs like Optum and health insurance companies?
Yeah, no, that's a good question actually, because PBMs is another specialized area over here. Sure. And when you apply for jobs that require PBM experience, as a matter of fact, they do not take anyone without a PBM experience, no matter who you are. Even if you work for inpatient pharmacy for a long time or retail, they look very heavily at the PBM experience, very similar to the informatics. So I think the certification in this field is vital. It's important. And I think it's similar to the informatics in that by itself, it may not be sufficient. You need to have some other project work or some other level of work with the PBMs to get into that area. But after this, I think the PBM space is less brutal than the informatics area when it comes to hiring. Because the PBMs, they can take entry level, and they will be more lenient when it comes to actual certification or formal training such as master's degree when you apply to them, because they know that the market share for PBM pharmacists is not huge, so they cannot be very picky when it comes to these, and that's why I think certification in this case would help a lot. So I encourage that. What I encourage people to do usually before you seek any certification or master's training, and before you start that long investment, is to actually reach out to the employer themselves. Reach out to Optum or United Healthcare, or any of these major PBMs, and see what their job posting is. Look at their postings online, see what they're asking for. Sometimes that gives you a hint whether they're relying heavily more on experience, or they are actually subsiding the experience with the certification. Because many cases you'd see a posting that says, okay, well, I'd like to have someone with 3 or 4 years of PBM experience, or maybe a master's degree, or you may see that vice versa, master's degree or equivalent experience, something like this. You'd see this a lot. So I encourage you, before you even invest into any of these programs, to look at the job market, see what the job postings are, especially locally where you want to be, and test the water over there. For the most part, I think you'll be on route if you actually do the certification and training, but always double check before you do that though.
Right, and I think for the PGY1, even if you go for the PGY1, it's a 1-year program, but you actually get 3 years worth of experience from PGY1, or with the PGY1 and PGY2, you get 6 years worth of experience.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
that's actually really good. I think I missed one question from Rania. It was something similar. So the question was, are you familiar with the postgraduate PharmD programs? If you are, is there any one program that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. I'm not sure if I know one specific one though to recommend over here, but I know the non-traditional PharmD programs. Once you get the PharmD, you are a PharmD. No one's going to ask you if you are traditional or non-traditional. Your resume is going to say PharmD on it, and that's what counts over here. I think I heard some non-traditional PharmD programs, I believe in the University of Phoenix, I believe somewhere. But you may just want to double check that, because honestly, I don't look into who offers these, and they may change over time. But I think many schools do offer it. But don't this terminology deter you from the no one's gonna care at the end of the day. I mean, the idea is that you're a PharmD graduate. It's just you took a different route to take your PharmD, and that's what's important here.
Okay, thanks a lot for answering this question. I think Ehtisham has another question, and Ehtisham, I would like to ask you to start your video so that you can ask this question, and I believe this is the last question for this session for today.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask one more question. My question, actually, there are two questions, and the brief, I think you can tell me. Dr. Abbasi, in future, let's say in 5, 10 years, being on the very important position where you are, alhamdulillah, how do you see the profession of pharmacy or practice of pharmacy where is it proceeding? Like, if I'm not able to make you understand, like technology wise, because everything is so tech friendly now, robotics, and it's also a competition for a pharmacist, because where you have so much technology available, and you need a person or engineer to take care of that technology. So where is the profession going in 5, 10 years? What's your insight about it? And the second thing, and I will end up with this question, uh, with the organizations like Memorial Hermann, Methodist, Harris Health System, or MD Anderson, what is the importance of volunteering in these pharmacy departments? I know these days, because of COVID, everybody says, no, we are not hiring any volunteer. But let's say if I get an offer or an opportunity to volunteer in a pharmacy department, would you recommend it to go and avail that opportunity, or should I just go and apply for my pharmacist jobs? Thank you.
Sure. So the first question was about how do we see the pharmacy profession in 5 to 10 years? And I'll tell you where the pharmacy is moving in this case. The pharmacy is moving to free up more pharmacists to do more clinical jobs. That's where the pharmacy is moving. And the automation is being introduced at a higher rate today because the goal is to free up pharmacists from doing the operational side. As a pharmacist, I mean, you're basically like when you apply for the license, your job was to dispense medications, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, right now, we don't want pharmacists to actually dispense medications. That's not the best use of their time. What we'd like them to do is that we need to have them more patient-safe facing roles and prove themselves as providers and get paid for that. That's what's going to happen later on. And that's why you would see like more centralized services being established across the country for distribution. At some point, you will see much less reliance on a central pharmacy to actually distribute the medication to the hospital. You'll see more reliance on satellite pharmacies maybe, but most of the larger institutions, like Memorial Hermann or HCA or Houston Methodist, you would see them like utilizing like a central supply or central distribution location to support the majority of the dispenses. And then you'd have the central pharmacies and satellites deal with just the on-the-fly requests such as like chemotherapy or like maybe stat medications and these kind of things. So this means that we're going to see a shift at some point with clinical pharmacists being more than the inpatient pharmacists in the operation side. And those roles won't be even like 100% patient facing physically. They'll be remotely at some point. There's also another shift towards the ambulatory side of business, because today, if you look at the healthcare arena across the United States, the amount of payment that the payers are paying you for your inpatient services are like a fraction to what you get paid on the ambulatory side. So, for me, it's better to actually, get engaged more on the ambulatory side or the outpatient side, because that's where the money is, as compared to the inpatient side, where you get paid on a DRG level. I mean, that's just basically a standard of how you get paid over there. And provider status doesn't really apply much inpatient as much as outpatient. So that's where I think where the shift is going to happen over the next maybe 5 to 10 years. You would see more clinical pharmacists being utilized, especially on the outpatient side and the ambulatory level. And then your other question was about volunteering. So volunteering, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to get your feet in the door in any institution, because for me, and I'll tell you this like from a true story. We get volunteers all the time, and they come and go for different reasons. But when one of these volunteers at some point decide to apply to us, we take them in a heartbeat. And again, we go back to the attitude. We go back to whether we know the person or no. You are with us basically. We know who you are. You are volunteering. You had your own reason to volunteer. We accepted that. that you are going to volunteer with us. But also we watched you, over the course of your volunteering. We know who you are, and that will actually put you in a much better position than someone who just showed up, across the door, because now we know you. Now, of course, you need to have your own credentials. You need to have your own, certificates, education, all the stuff. But that becomes basically just meeting the bottom line for employment. If you meet these, then you are in a much better position than anyone else who can apply for the job. I highly encourage people to apply here. The idea is that when you volunteer, it's important, if you seek pharmacy informatics, for example, is that you actually reach out to the pharmacy informatics department and ask for volunteering within that department. That's possible, and that's even much better if you'd like to do it that way. And if your goal is to get engaged with the inpatient hospital altogether, then I would say just apply to be a volunteer in the inpatient department to help with anything. I mean, basically the volunteers, you don't handle like, patient data or any of this stuff. What you do, you do repetitive tasks that do not jeopardize our patient information. And that's fine, but at least we saw you, we know who you are. That's the goal over here. So I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Atasham, for asking this question. And I believe we don't have any other questions right now. And I would like to thank Dr. Ghalib Abbasi once again for a very informative session. And also I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And it would not have been possible without support of you all, without support of Dr. Ghalib Abbasi. So I would like to conclude the session over here right now, and have a great rest of the evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.